Welcome, Tommy Thompson, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you.
Yes, same. And I had to stop you early on because we were getting into a good conversation before we hit record. I was like, oh man, this is going to be good. So I'm so excited to have you on. You are a life coach, author, and podcaster. And today we're going to be talking about, how can we create that purpose in our life? Because there's different aspects to creating the spaces for the things that we desire, as we were talking about. But I'm going to pass this to you and to have you introduce yourself and then to talk about why you got into this work.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you today, Michael, and I appreciate you having me. And I love to talk about this idea of creating space in our life because I think it's so countercultural to everything going on around us. And yet I also believe it's fundamental to all of the things we desire most in life. My background over 35, 40 years of being an entrepreneur. So I've owned and run, along with my brother, probably 7 or 8 different businesses across all sorts of different industries. And it's really out of that experience which led me to a place of extreme stress and overload that kind of out of desperation, I began to learn this lesson that the very best things in life come when we can create those pauses in our life, when we can create that space out of which we can have better relationships, out of which we can live more purposefully and intentionally, how we can find just some type of normalcy and balance and peace in our lives. And even, I think there's a real absence of joy in our culture. And I think it's because people are trying to find joy in speed and glitz, and it just doesn't happen there. So I kind of am hoping to be a countercultural voice to help people find the life I think we all just so desperately desire.
One of the things I love to ask is when you have siblings, because I have a brother, I have a sister, and we have very similar upbringings, right? We grew up in the same house and stuff like that, but the mindset is typically different. And you said that you started about 7 or 8 different businesses with your brother. Does your brother have the same sentiment when it comes to like the joy and life and helping people now? Or is he more of that entrepreneurial type mindset and still like a go-getter making all these businesses?
A little bit of both. I mean, he's definitely an entrepreneur and a go-getter, and I really kind of consider that to be a lot of my personality too. But at the same time, I think out of some of the same stressful situations that we went through together in trying to run the businesses, he also learned kind of from the other side some of the same lessons. And so he talks about his kind of phrase that he uses is the importance of getting off the freeway. And he learned that, in order to get perspective on life, in order to work through some of the most complex problems, we have to get off the freeway. We don't solve problems when we're running at a breakneck speed. Over the years, he's learned the same lessons. We come at it with different personalities, but we very much share the same values and some of those same core beliefs about what it takes in order to live well.
That's powerful because when it comes to, business owners, they get so busy sometimes where they forget to pay attention. They're worried about all the things that are going wrong rather than the things that are going right. And even when we get into the aspect now of relationships and family, how many people in our world today, like truly, like if you think about it, it's and the number is scary, have a close relationship with their family where they want to start a business or do something with them. I mean, 7 to 8 businesses with your brother. Today in our world, our society is like, all right, you do your own thing, I'll do my own thing, and then we all try to find joy in a different place. Relationships, though, that's powerful because we even talked about faith early on, where we have this unity. Like if you go to a church, like some type of ministry, and you're there, you're typically not going to be the only one there. There's going to be a community of people that are uniting for one cause. And today we have failed to understand that that unity and that togetherness is a good thing. We have now operated in the sense of being our, individuals, having a solidarity type mindset where it's like, I'll do everything myself. I'll fight all my battles myself. I'll do all the hard things myself. And you have the years behind you. You know the power of going together. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have lost a lot of exactly what you're saying, which I think is a core message in the Bible. So if you go back to like the very beginning of the Bible in the story of the Garden of Eden, one of the very first thing happened after 7 days of creation, of which on every single one of those days, God said, it's good, it's good. And then finally ends up with this, incredible statement. It was very good. But yet in the Garden of Eden, which is put forth as this perfect place, we get this statement, it is not good that man is alone. Right from the very beginning, the first not good thing in all creation is that we try to make it alone. I think that this unity, truly connecting with people on a soul level, whether that's in your family or even over a podcast, is where the best of life happens. I also think that that happens when we create space so that we can listen well, so that we can connect. But I think that's probably one of the most fundamental aspects of living a good life, is living a life in community and in relationship. And I think we've lost it, as you say, because we're trying to do it alone, and because we're trying to do relationships while constantly distracted, by our phones and by, juggling a million different things. And so we're missing out on joy. And I don't think that has to be at the expense of living a purposeful, successful life. I think they can go hand in hand.
When we look at just like the analogy of like a shepherd and sheep, and the job of the shepherd is to, make sure the sheep are safe and that they're together. And sometimes the sheep will go off and do the wrong thing. And then that shepherd has to go find the sheep, bring them back to the flock, and then everything is good. And in the Bible, there's multiple stories and scenarios where individuals will go off and they will do things with, maybe they'll spend money, gamble, drink, and do all of these things where eventually they come back to where they are. Do you see that happening in our world where we are able to come back just naturally after we have experienced the struggle by ourselves and said, this can't be life? Or is it something that we have to remind people and instill people saying, hey, this is a fight that we don't have to do it by ourselves. We can do it together.
Yeah, I wish I could say that I thought that people come back naturally. I don't see that. I feel like, in a sense, we're in a war for our own lives and our own souls. And I think that often what happens is life delivers us to a defining moment. And in that defining moment, we choose which fork in the road that we're going to take. And that fork in the road can be towards greater independence, greater levels of rebellion, greater levels of resentment and bitterness, greater levels of just fighting against, or it can lead us to say, this isn't working. I want to find a better way. And we do turn back. And in the Bible, it uses a word that we don't really like these days, and I understand it. It's talked about repent. And the word repent literally just means to turn around. That's all that word means in the original Greek. And so I think we arrive at some point in our lives, almost all of us, at a point where the road forks and we either turn back towards what we know is true and right and good towards God, or we decide, you know what, I'm going to double down and I'm going to go at it on my own. Unfortunately, just doesn't work out very often well, at least not in the long run.
I definitely agree with that because when we look at the aspect of a guide, a mentor, what life coaches do typically is we help people understand, like, okay, we're going down this path. Is this truly the path that you want? And we look at a lifetime. We're not just looking at what's going to happen tomorrow. We're looking at the long term. And sometimes we fail to understand the long term, especially the younger generation. Because if we think of kids today, they're so busy growing up that they forget that their parents are growing old, their grandparents are growing old, and maybe mom and dad, they can't do the things that they used to do. And we're still so busy doing what we have to do. I'm not saying that we can't live our life or that they shouldn't live their life, but to give attention to them, right? Before everything was modernized, parents had children not because of purpose, but because they would have these children take care of them as they grew up and grew older. Today, children would throw their parents in a nursing home quicker than you can say, don't do it. And this is crazy how we have gone so far from family that now everything is starting to splinter. It's now culture, it's now society. It's because we don't even have the love for our own blood. How can we start to appreciate other people if we can't even appreciate the people who have the best intentions for us in life?
Well, it's so true, but I think, as you said, all of that's about playing the long game. And that long game comes because in the early years when you're changing diapers and the kids are small, you're giving attention to them. You're spending time. You're understanding the values that you want to live and you're passing them along. And if we aren't in that place, then we're kind of behind the eight ball in terms of building a culture and a family. That's what we want. It just, that commitment to playing the long game. And, for me, if people are listening and not watching, they wouldn't necessarily know that I've got a lot of gray hair. And that gray hair kind of came with a price, but it's given me often a voice to people because I try to encourage people along the lines that I'm talking about, but it's encouragement from the places that I fell and that I didn't do. I've learned from mistakes. So it's not because life has been easy. It hasn't been easy in so many ways. It's because by the grace of God, I've learned from that. And that's what I, hope to offer to people.
Would you say that an easy life is going to make a good life, or that a life full of struggle is going to create a more meaningful life?
Well, I would say, first of all, I think it's an extremely rare situation that anybody has an easy life. I think what I feel like can be said to begin with is an easy life does not create a good life. That I know. Now, a hard life does not necessarily create a good life. A hard life creates the opportunity where we can make the choices that can lead to a good life, or it has the opportunities, like I say, that fork in the road that we can go the other direction. But the hard life is what does create that possibility that something good can come from it. It's just like we don't go into a gym and lift a 1 pound dumbbell and think that we're going to make some progress. We've got to create some stress. We've got to go through some work. And that's how we're going to create strength for the long haul. So it's the same thing in life. It's those really difficult circumstances that create the possibility that we can become strong people.
Powerful. Yet many people today, they don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the aspect of being consistent, or, putting themselves out there because of fear, because they might have seen someone not do it, or maybe they have been told that they can't do it. And they start to take all of these different beliefs from other people, and then they begin to allow them to be their own. I always say that if you tell yourself a lie long enough, it becomes your truth. In our world today, we have told ourselves many lies. We have lost our creativity. We have lost our ability to critically think. We have lost our aspects of what we were talking about earlier of relationships with family, loved ones, faith-based stuff. Now is more so of let me just live my life the best I can. And the younger generation, I'm not sure if you heard of the FIRE movement, but it's basically just a financially free, independent type of living where they're not worried about anything. They're like they want to retire at the age of 30. And I'm not saying that retiring at 30 is a bad thing, but like in my head, I'm like, what are you going to do? It's like you have to give yourself the long game almost because it's about purpose. And the moment we take purpose out of life, what else do we have? What is your answer to that?
Yeah, I think we have a shallow existence, when we take that out. I think of, again, not to throw the Bible into our conversation too much, but I think
Throw
about,
it in there.
okay, I think the parable of the sower, I think it's a powerful image. So in that parable of the sower, there are four types of soil. The exact same seed goes into all four types of soil. The first one is hard pan. What we think of hard pan, and hard pan is dirt that is sacked together that the seed cannot penetrate it, and it just runs off and affects nothing. The second is soil that is so shallow that it just burns out. And that's like that fire movement that you're talking about. It's creating shallow people that in the end just burn out. Then the third soil has these thorns and stones all in it, and that chokes out the seed. And you think about the whole image of stress and anxiety, and you think of people saying, I'm just trying to catch my breath. I'm out of breath. That's this experience of being choked. And yet the rich soil is topsoil with space in it. It's got some purity to it. Only 1 out of 4, 25% of the soils produce good fruit. The rest, it either runs off, it burns out, or it chokes. And I think that's actually such an amazing picture of our culture. And so you take that younger generation you're talking about in that fire movement, and you have people who are going all in on really a shallow existence. And I think it's only as we commit ourselves to depth and substance and purpose that we will find joy, relationship, and peace. We won't know that necessarily until down the road. We make our choices on the front end. I'm convinced, and it's what I have seen time and time again with friends going down different paths, young people choosing different paths, is that it's that path of substance and relationship and faith and purpose that creates abundance and joy and meaning. I just pray it's not the easier road, but I pray that people will choose that.
One of the things I love about at least this podcast is that, everyone has a different personality. They have a different experience, different beliefs and values. And I welcome every bit of it. For you to talk about faith and religion, I want you to. I want those here because I understand that I won't be able to reach everyone with who I am as a person, right? Think of it as like if you think of a school, like you could think of your favorite teacher, maybe. Like, why is that teacher your favorite teacher? You had probably 12 of them, where we're able to pinpoint the person who resonated with us the most. And sometimes our message can come at the most opportune times, and we might not even know or expect for them to come. Because I have found that when you try to force someone to change, it's more difficult for them to change. They're like stubborn, they don't want to do it. They're like ox. They're like, okay, great. Like I have to do this. But for the people who listen to the podcast, they understand what the message is. Everyone has a different voice. And sometimes the voice is going to reach you, at the innate soul level. And sometimes it's just going to be a conversation that you kind of just brush off as you're going through traffic. Everyone's going to have a different experience. And that's why I just love having people come on to talk about their experience. But then I want to ask the question of our path, because sometimes when it comes to religion, and I'm not picking on you or anything, it's just in general, some people are adamant about telling people about the path that they're on. This is my path, and I want you to be aware that I'm on this path, and you should walk on this path also. It's almost like they're trying to change a person or maybe force a person to see what they see. However, that person's on their own path. They're going down their own journey, right? They have their different forks in the road, and maybe that fork is one day going to reach to your path, but they might not be there yet. What's your take on people who try to instill their path onto other people?
First of all, I agree with you, and I really appreciate your openness that you're expressing because I think it's truly being open is a rare thing these days. But I agree with you that, attempting to push your thoughts or your beliefs on someone else, it generally doesn't work. I think, honestly, generally it comes out of an insecurity in the person. We have to find our way. If it's not ours, if we don't own it, if it isn't truly from our own heart, then it's not real, even if we assent to it with words and otherwise. I just know in my own life that I have to be a place of being receptive for even the right thing, even the true thing to penetrate for me. It can be the greatest wisdom in the world. If I'm not listening, it doesn't make any difference. I believe that also for the things that I would encourage people. They have to be ready for it. Frankly, so many of the lessons that I've learned in life were out of desperation because I was ready for it. And, my hope in sharing some of the things that I'm talking about of creating space is that maybe there are a few people out there that are just so stressed out and overloaded that they're ready for something like what I'm talking about. Everybody is going to be that way. That's totally fine. We're certainly going to be a lot happier if we can accept one another the way we are, just like you're talking about. But we all have to be ready in order to receive a message, religious or otherwise, frankly.
Yeah, no, this is 100% accurate. We do have to be ready to receive it because if someone's going through it, typically a trauma or the times of desperation is going to be a momentum booster for some people. People love to change when things are not going well. But when things are going okay, doesn't even have to be great. They will stay there. They might be slowly becoming more unhappy with their job, but they don't do anything about it. They might stop investing in their relationship with their spouse. It's not a divorce yet, so we're not worried about it. And they're continually just going steadily downhill, trickling downhill. And instead of going downhill, we can look up and we could start to go up. We could start to take steps going to something better. But we typically will go to that negative first and hope that we can bounce back high enough where either we get back to where we were, even maybe a slightly better place. This is something that people just naturally do. How can people start to become more true to their heart, where they're constantly focused on how can I be a step better, incrementally better in all aspects, whether it be myself, my personal life, or the relationships and the family that I have around me? How can we start to take those steps to be incrementally better?
Yeah, I think it begins with taking a step back. I have something that I take a lot of my coaching clients through. It's called a whole life assessment. And in it, I list 10 different categories of life. And that 10 different categories kind of encompasses the breadth of life. And what I have these clients do offline is go through these 10 areas and just rate themselves on how they're doing in that area of life on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, I am just nailing it. I'm doing so well. One being, I'm a complete, utter disaster. So they'll rate themselves generally somewhere, let's say between a 3 and an 8, typically, or something like that. And then I have them write what I call a State of the Union statement. And that's just give me a couple of sentences that describes your number. You described yourself as a 7 in the area of your marriage? Why wasn't it an 8? Why wasn't it a 6? What was it? What are the things that you feel like qualify it for a 7 or keep it from being higher? And by going through that exercise, what it does is it immediately kind of brings to the surface those 1 or 2 areas that are off kilter, that are sabotaging the other areas, and it highlights them. And just by that simple exercise of explaining it, you can quickly get right to the heart of the matter. So for someone, they might go, I'm really doing okay in all areas except my finances are a shamble and I'm spending money otherwise, and it is just creating such incredible stress. Well, now as a coach and for the person as an individual, we know exactly where to go. So the categories of relationships and faith and finances and health and experiences and emotional stability, all of these areas, it helps us. But even that exercise, it requires someone to be willing to step back for a moment and reflect on their lives. And if they'll do just that, then hopefully they'll just get a taste of, wow, that was really helpful for me. And they'll step back a little bit further to take the next step and then the next step. And they'll realize this process of reflecting, this process of assessing, this process of thinking through is helping me get in front of some of the things that I've been drowning in for all these time. That's kind of the process. It's taking that moment to step back and do an honest assessment of what's working and what's not working in your life.
Yeah, I just love the aspect of writing things down, like journaling, just putting things in front of you. You work with a financial advisor and you're going through the deck, guess what? You're writing things down. If you're going to see a therapist and you're talking about different emotions, you're writing things down. It's because sometimes our mind can be so busy with everything. We think, what, $60,000 or something or more? It's like a day. That's a lot of thoughts that are going through our mind. It might even be more now. We have to understand which ones are the most important one. And if we just kind of go through haphazardly at every moment, we're not going to find what's true to us, what's meaningful to us, where we need to make some adjustments and where we need to make, or where we have to commit to some more work. We have to be reminded sometimes. And I have found that getting a coach, getting a mentor, getting a guide, writing things down is going to be some of the best things that you can do for yourself, because the goal is for you to get into and to be in a better place. But sometimes we are going to be that obstacle. We have to get out of that mindset. So as we begin to wrap up, I would love to get some final words from you and then for you to tell the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a fun conversation, and the conversation is that it'll just pique a few people's interest to say, you know what, life doesn't have to be the way it is now. There is a path out. And I think, as you said, that path often involves bringing someone alongside on the journey. It doesn't have to be a life coach or someone, it can be a good friend, but often it takes someone else to see the things that we can't see. And I couldn't agree with you more. The act of writing things down brings just a surprising clarity that doesn't happen if we don't go through a little bit of that discipline. I hope the conversation sparks some hope in people for a little bit better way. In terms of my things, that's certainly a lot of what I do in my coaching. Real easy to find me. It's www.tommythompson.org. Easy name. And that has a little blog I write called Reflections. It has the book that I wrote, Space to Breathe Again. You can find my podcast, which is Space for Life, all which are just all of the different ways in which we can, incorporate things into our life, as well as that whole life assessment tool is on my website, free for anybody who wants to do it, just to say, I'm curious on this. I certainly welcome all of that, love to just help in whatever way I can for people in their walk, just like the good work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to make it easy for everyone. All the links are going to be in the description box below. Everyone check out his website, join his podcast list and listen to what he's talking about, read the blogs, because that is going to be the start. Sometimes a conversation, a phone call can be a bit daunting. I understand you're talking to a stranger, but realize something. The friends that you keep close to you, and that's why I excluded friends, they typically have their own life. They're doing their own thing. It's very similar to how kids and parents, like they're just kind of going down their own path right now. They're on their own fork in the road. And sometimes when you start to do better than the people around you, they can act like anchors sometimes. And I'm not saying every friend is like that. I'm not saying everyone is like that. But if you have someone who's committed to you being a better person, typically it can be a parent sometimes it's not. Because I know parents that sometimes can be those anchors too. You have to know and you have to realize who are going to be the people that are going to help you, that are going to uplift you, and that are going to be the assets in your corner. Find those people. Tommy, I loved our conversation today. I know you're going to be one of those assets to individuals, helping them on their path, on their journey. And you do it in a way that is full of love and care and understanding that where you are doesn't have to be where you want to be. Let's figure out where you want to be together.
Thank you so much, Michael.